All right, so first thing I'm going to do, okay, I'm gonna do a little bit on the corn, and then I'll show you. I actually did a lot of the corn for my 5th bell. I'll do a little bit on the corn to start it off, and then I'll show you some of the other stuff so you can see some other colors. So with my corn, now what you're going to do first, what you need to do first is look and study at the colors that your photograph is telling you are there. And this part's going to sound a little weird, but when I look at something that's got color on it, I think about it in that it's made up of lots of layers of transparent color. So we're just talking about kind of like layers of tissue paper stacked on top of each other to make this look. So what I do in my head is I'm trying to kind of strip those layers of color off, and what I want to do is ask myself, okay, what is the undertone of this area, okay? And so when I look at some of the corn on here, I'll try to zoom in a little bit here. When I look at some of the corn, I do have some highlights on there. So if I have a highlight, what color do you think I should start off with? What color do you think I should start off with? I see some really bright highlights here on some of my corn kernels. White, that's right, okay? So for that reason, I'm going to pull white in. So this is how I kind of start. I'll grab these colors that I think I'm going to use, and I am going to put them right up against that area of my drawing I'm working on, because I'm going to ask myself, okay, do I see that color in there? If the answer is yes, I'm going to keep it. All right, what other colors do you think I need to grab for the corn? Orange, yes. What else? Yellow, yeah. What else? Red, yep. Let me kind of wipe these off. They're a little dirty. I'm going to lay these kind of like in order of lightest to darkest. So I've got these in red. Okay. I'm also going to throw in a dark brown for the darker areas. Now I'm probably not going to use, I'm going to kind of treat that brown like I do black, in the sense that I'm not going to add that brown until towards the end. And I might even go back over it with like that dark red, just to make it so that it's less brown and just more red. Okay, so I've got my colors that I'm going to use. So now I'm ready to start. So when I do this, okay, I'm going to take my white, and you guys can work alongside me or kind of deal with, you can watch me for a little bit and then start, or work with me side by side. Obviously, not everyone has corn in their piece, and even if you do have corn, it's probably not the same color as mine. So you need to start with one part of your quad here, or one object. Grab the colors that you think are in there. Test it out just the same way that I did with mine. I laid my colors right down to my photograph, so I could see if I see those colors in there. Okay, so you guys can start that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start, and I'm going to work lightest to darkest, okay? So I'm going to start with my white, since it's the lightest color that I have. I'm going to kind of put my colors in my hand in order of lightest to darkest. And I'm just going to lay this white, a thin layer of white, wherever I see my corn looking light and bright. Now that's definitely going to be my highlights, but I also have some of these yellow parts in here that look really bright too. So I want to make sure I start off with a layer of white first. And I'm basically going to plug this white wherever I see those bright colors. And if you notice, I'm working very thin here, so I'm not putting down hardly any pressure at all on my oil pastel. I'm not making this real like a heavy application. I'm just starting very lightly, and this is just my way of kind of mapping things out, because I haven't figured anything out really yet. So if I'm still in that figuring out stage and I'm questioning what I'm doing, I'm going to keep everything very thin. Plus, you know, I don't know how these other colors are going to react to what I've got down, so again, I want to give myself room to make adjustments. So I'm going to put this white again wherever I see my light and bright areas. And I would also too encourage you guys to push your values and colors even further. So like some of that corn looks like it's on fire. I'm really going to try to push that. I'm going to make my corn look like it's on fire. All right, so then after I've kind of plugged that white wherever I saw it, this last layer of corn right here is really dark, so I don't want these colors to show up bright, so I'm not going to put white down. So now what I'm going to do is then move on to my next darkest color, and that is yellow. So I'm going to lay down this yellow on top of my white, wherever I see it. But I do have some really, what I call bright and shiny highlights that I'm going to work around and leave white. And you'll get that on some of these fruits and vegetables that you guys chose, especially because they're kind of shinier materials or surfaces. You'll get those bright and shiny white highlights. So I'm going to lay that down wherever I see it. And if you guys notice, I am working on all my corn at one time. So I'm not just, trying to start and finish one kernel and then move on to the next one. I'm building up all these kernels up together. And that's a little trick, again, that a lot of artists make just to make sure that everything looks like it belongs. So if I started and finished just one and then moved on to the next one, they probably aren't going to look like they match. And I'm going to go ahead and take this yellow into some of these darker areas that I see. I don't have white underneath all these areas that I have the yellow applied. And that's going to keep it on the dollar side, but I want to make sure I have yellow underneath a lot of this stuff, because really when I look at this, I see a lot of yellow in my corn. I'm not going to put yellow, though, where my colors get dark, because yellow could lighten it. So I'm pretty much going to just lay this yellow down wherever I see the lightest and sort of medium tones. You can already tell the difference between how that yellow looks with the white underneath and how it looks when there is no white underneath. Two very different things. So feel free to kind of work at your own pace here. All right, so I've got kind of my, oops, I forgot one. Okay, now I'm going to go with my next darkest, which is orange. I'm going to start putting that down. Now, a lot of this stuff, guys, on like how do you know when to do what, when to put this color down versus that, and why'd you pick that versus this. A lot of that stuff just comes from doing this a million times. So the best way to kind of come to a lot of these conclusions, since you guys don't have as much experience, is just ask yourself a bunch of questions. What do I see? How dark or how light is that? What color do I see underneath it? These are questions that I'm asking myself when I do this. So I'm looking at each kernel. I'm asking myself, what does this shape look like that the orange is making? I'm not treating each and every single one of these the same, because they're all, believe it or not, all these kernels are different sizes. Similar shapes, but lots of different sizes. But because they're kind of different sizes and the forms are slightly different, these shapes that these colors are making are all different from one kernel to the other. And you can see I'm starting to kind of lose the intersections between these, but they'll come back. Okay, so there's my, so now I've got 3 colors down here. I've got white, yellow, and orange. So now I'm going to move to my red. Now, some of you guys might notice some of these oil pastels might be getting a little short. If they ever get short, you just take the paper and kind of peel off some of the paper so you have more of the stick exposed. That's not a problem. So. All right, so now I'm going to go in and start plugging in this red. This is my darkest warm color, so hopefully I can start carving out these forms with this. So I'm just, again, looking at the shapes that these colors are making on here. And as you can see, I'm still applying it very lightly. It's got a very, very unfinished look to it. And I wouldn't expect it to start to look finished at all right now because I'm not ready to finish it. Still trying to figure stuff out. Now you'll notice too the oil pastel, because it's this stick form, it can be hard to get into little nooks and crannies, but with a little patience you can make it happen. So again, I'm just kind of mapping this out. Everybody's project's going to be unique to your own, so everybody's going to have different kinds of problems to solve. Some of my kernels down here are getting really red down here, so I'm going to be laying down a lot more red down here on the bottom. Again, my corn is as red as it's looking right now. It's because there's a red radish sitting right next to it, so corn being a kind of a lighter yellow color is going to reflect a lot of the colors that's around it. So that red radish, being as bold and as saturated as it is going to have a big effect on a light color like a yellow. I'm going to definitely try to capitalize on that. Okay, so I've got my main colors again. Now you guys notice, remember I said I grabbed a brown. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it or not, so I'm just going to I'm going to leave this out yet because I'm not confident I need it. So now what I'm going to do, after I've got my initial layers, I'm going to go back over, and now I'm going to start adding another layer of media on top of this. And this is when you should start to see stuff blend and look a little bit more sort of finished. Although I don't want to finish it quite yet, I'm still going to, even though I'm going over this stuff, I still want to leave myself some room to make adjustments. Because this is the first time I've seen it right now with the colors starting to work together. So I still want an opportunity to kind of push and tweak. So now I'm just going back over, and now you can start to see everything kind of blend together, and this is when it gets really fun. when I'm ready to commit to these colors and I feel like they're going in the right direction, I do put more pressure down on my oil pastel. If I'm not sure about what I'm doing, I'm certainly not going to be putting a lot of pressure down. So now you can see my top layer is starting to look a little bit more blended. Again, I'm just still giving myself some room to make changes. I don't want to finish this right now. I want to be able to read it, see what it looks like together. I will say I think I'm going to need that brown in there. I need to lay down this top part. So I'm going to go in this top layer. I feel like I need a little punch. So I'm going to go in with this brown. I didn't want to go with black because black I think would be too harsh. I'm going with this brown. That looks a little too brown, so now all I'm going to do is just go back over it with the red and let the red go in and kind of warm it up. There we go. Also is helping me fill in some gaps. Okay, so top layer. It's getting burnished. Still got some room left. I'll show you what my piece from Fifth Bell looks like. So this is with a lot more done to it. But basically I just went over, again with more layers, let everything kind of blend together. I did need that. I used this dark brown into some of these areas to get some punch because I just felt like everything was kind of lacking that last dark value that I needed. And so that's what that looks like. And you can see there's still some paper showing through here, so I still have room to, make adjustments and fix things and stuff. And that's good. I'm not gonna push that too much right now. So there's kind of like your before and then your after. All right, so what I'm going to do now is kind of work on another area. I'm going to work on this this really dark shape right here. So this dark shape right in here is actually my construction paper. It's just a really, really dark shadow that's on there. I am definitely probably going to have to use black, but I don't want to use black first, okay? My construction paper color was blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with my darkest blue first, which is Prussian blue. And I'm going to go ahead and put a thin layer of this Prussian blue down in this area. Again, you can tell in my photograph it looks dark enough that I could just, I'm going to need black in there, but I don't. I'm going to use what I like to call my artistic license. And I want to bring a little bit more depth to that area by adding blue in this, because this is a dark blue section of my construction paper. So it needs to have blue in it. And again, it's so hard sometimes to get into these small areas. Okay, got a layer of Prussian blue on there. So now I'm going to go in and add some black in there, thin layer. And again, that's the same thing with like how you use white. You know, there's a big difference between if you use white at the beginning or at the end of something. You get two different looks, even though you might be using the same colors. Just because of the order, you're going to get something different. So now I'm going to go back over this area with a layer of Prussian blue. Just kind of blend in that black. So now it's, you know, in my photograph it might look black, but now in my piece it's going to look like a dark blue, which should read richer than the photograph. And that's another key thing to mention, guys, is that when everything is said and done on this project, you do not want people to prefer the photograph to your drawing. Your goal is to make your drawing preferable to the photograph. So we want the drawing to look more exciting. So that's why I say push your colors. You see something look kind of warm, go ahead and make it warmer looking. If you see something look light, make it look brighter and lighter. You get a hint of this color, go ahead and push a little bit further, like push your colors. So that way, again, it's more exciting than just copying the photograph. So take advantage of it. Alright, I'm going to start my radish here. My radish is a pretty bold red. So for this one, I don't want to start necessarily, I don't see any brightness. Let's see, my brighter areas are out of the picture frame I'm using. I'm actually going to start with a layer of yellow rather than white, because, and here's the tricky part with red. If I lay down white first and red on top, what color am I going to get, guys? I'm going to get pink. I don't really want pink on this. I want more of kind of like an orangey red color. So that's why I'm going to start with yellow first. So you got to go back to what you learned about color in Art 1. How do you make certain colors? here's the tricky part too. I'm starting to get a little bit of that blue that I laid down for that background in this radish. So you gotta be careful. Ah, got some of it. Now another bit of advice that you might find helpful is that anytime you're really not sure what colors you should be using, practice in your sketchbook first. It's a great place to kind of practice things before you practice on your final project. It's not always a good idea. So feel free to get out your sketchbook at any point when you're working on this project and just practice some of your ideas that you might have. There we go. The other tricky part too is making sure you don't see these borders around your project. You can see I do have some here where you see the outline is a bit exposed, so I'll need to go back through that and fill those in. And again, if you're having any problems kind of filling the paper up, like you still see the tooth of the paper shining through, it looks a little spotty or splotchy, just go over that area in a couple different directions and it should work out fine. And then I need to darken this up. So I do have some dark shadows showing here on my radish, so I'm going to pull in again. My Prussian blue is going to be my go-to color for darkening up a lot of things. Especially when I'm dealing with something that's red. So I'm just kind of plugging in where I see this darker shadow. And now I'm going to kind of work it into that red with red. Blending it in. Again, if you guys have noticed, I haven't used my finger at all to blend anything. I'm letting the oil pastel do all the work for me. So there's that part. I could even possibly go in and add a little bit more red. Make sure you're wiping off your colors when you're switching. Now I'm going to start my stems, and again, it's just a whole nother part of the object, so I'm going to go back through my little process of figuring out what colors I need to use by grabbing these colors and putting them right next to my photograph and asking myself, do I see that color in there? If I do, I'm going to try to pull it in. And once I kind of come up with some ideas, then I'm going to start. And again, every time you start a new thing, you're going to need to start with a light, thin layer. This is not a coloring book, guys, so don't be approaching this like you're, you know, my 7-year-old and her little Pokemon coloring book that she can't get enough of. Working that shadow. Again, whatever colors I see in these things, I'm going to try to push it. I want to make my colors look, you know, more saturated, bolder, louder than what I see in the photo. Alright, so guys, we have about 4 minutes left. So you need to go ahead and start cleaning up. Alright, so go ahead and start cleaning up. Put all your pastel sets away. Remember, just have one person take all 6 sets back to the bins. Tomorrow we will finish the quad and the warm and cool value scales. You'll need to finish these 3 things before you start on your final.
Is there a specific place where you keep paper clips? Because they're long.
I have paper clips in that white container on my desk.
afternoon fireworks, couple announcements. Remember, tomorrow's Tourist Tuesday. Also, the students we talked about this morning, please make sure you come down to the office. We announced it this morning. SJ meeting after school in the cafeteria. Yeah, pick up the PSAT, sign up for it, pick up the free study guide and guide. And there's some follow-up, and you'll be held 5:45 to 7 on Monday for the freshman campus. Thank you for today's announcement. Have a fabulous day. And as always, go Fire.
Have a nice day, guys.